Hello, everyone. This is Maya Zahira with psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And we are live here on Zoom. This is a free monthly class for members of my free Facebook group, Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. And we still have people joining. So we're just going to keep going as I let people into the Zoom room. Today's topic is all about fairies and elementals. And we're going to be discussing, are fairies and elementals lovely and wonderful and playful, or are they dangerous, evil, or mischievous? Or maybe all of the above. And since this is Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and our topics are all about spiritual protection, we definitely want to evaluate the answer to this question. Are fairies and other earth spirits, elementals, are they safe to work with and communicate with or not? So let's dive right in. Okay, so as always, I have about 2 pages of notes here in my notebook. So forgive me as I glance down because I want to make sure that I cover everything on our list. So first of all, those of you who have been joining us in Zoom, go ahead and say hi and let us know where you're joining from. I do like for this to be interactive, but because we have a lot to cover, we do only use the chat option and we rarely have participants come on and talk. So go ahead and use the chat as much as you want, and I'll go ahead and read your comments in just a little bit. So before we get into our topic, I want to go through really quick some information, announcements. Let's get that over with, and then we'll get into our lesson for today. I've got to put on my glasses here. Okay. All right. So quick announcements. If you want to go deeper than what is offered in this free class, you can find a ton of free classes, like I think over 100 hours of free content on the YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and type in Psychic Protection Sanctuary, you may already be on the YouTube channel watching this replay. But if you're not, that's a great, oh, Catherine, go ahead and mute yourself, honey. Hang on. We need to, hang on. I got to find the button because she's not hearing us. Hang on. Okay. Mute. I'm a one-woman show here, taking care of the tech stuff too. So welcome, everybody. So as I was saying, free YouTube channel, great resource, lots of introductory information. And if there are people who don't have a lot of resources, and I, on purpose, it is my goal to make sure that everybody can receive something. So that's why we have over 100 hours of free content on there. And then if you want to work with me, you can find information about that on my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And there's information about my books. You can find those on Amazon or on the website. And then I do have a paid academy where you can mentor with me. It is a 12-month, it's not a quickie thing. It's like if you really need assistance and you want to work with me, Spiritual Empowerment Academy is the way to go. And it is a 12-month program. You can join anytime. Information is on the website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Okay, we're done with all that over here. A couple little logistics. I am a teacher at heart, so I think it would be great if you grabbed a pen and paper and took notes. But if that's not how you roll, that's okay too. But if you're a note taker, go ahead and grab your pen and your notebook and and be ready to jot down some thoughts, maybe some of your own thoughts and ideas coming through. Or also at the end, I'm going to give you 4 really simple but important tips for working safely with fairies and elementals. Okay. So, like, our ultimate question is, are fairies and elementals actually real? So, like, are they actually a thing? I was listening to a video a while back, and they were saying something like, anybody who thinks that fairies are real, you can immediately write them off because they're off in left field and totally delusional, crazy, da da da. But if you have found your way to my channel, you probably believe in things. You've probably had a lot of encounters that are quite unusual. And you might be like me, where you tend to believe things that are outside the box. Maybe you've even had personal experiences with fairies or elementals. So we're not going to debate, are they real? We're going to just, for the scope and the time of this video, we're just going to say, let's just say that they are real, and we're going to discuss our topic as such. Our main focus is, are fairies and elementals safe? Are they safe to work with? Are they dangerous? Are they lovely and beautiful, or are they evil and mischievous? We want to find out. Now, I would love to hear about some of your stories. So those of you who are here live, and also those of you watching the replay, wherever you're watching it, I would love for you to share a little bit about your own story. Go ahead and, if you feel called to, go ahead and type and share in the, those of you who are here live, go ahead and share in the chat. The rest of you share in the comments. The more stories that we share, the more complete answer I think you will find. And that, what I mean by this is that in today's video, I'm going to share with you my perspective on this, but I really feel like my perspective is not, especially in this area of fairies and elementals, my perspective is not necessarily the ultimate truth, capital T. I'm going to tell you what I think and what my experiences have been, but some of you may have had completely opposite experiences. And so you may have come to a completely opposite conclusion. And the more stories that we can share, the better, because other people are going to read all the comments and so on. So for the most part, I want to share these ideas, want to share my ideas with you to support you in developing your own beliefs about this. Okay. Let's see, where are we at? So, I would love to know if you've had an encounter with a fairy or multiple fairies or other elementals like gnomes, elves, dwarves, etc. Some people feel that they have one or more spirit guides that are elementals. And some people have had paranormal experiences where they feel that they have seen or felt or experienced some type of elemental. By the way, just a little bit of vocabulary. Elemental is the word that I use to describe an earth spirit. And so under the umbrella of elemental, we would put fairies, gnomes, elves, dwarves. There's actually a huge list of different types of elementals, which is beyond the scope of what I intend to teach here today. But there are a lot of books on the topic. If this really interests you, you can go and study all of the information about the many different types of elementals. So here, I'm not talking about the elements, earth, air, fire, water. I'm talking about elementals, which are earth spirits. There are also earth spirits that reside within plants like trees. I've actually seen a spiritual face over a house plant on more than one occasion, over a tree, the upper part of a tree. So plants have an earth spirit with them. So it's actually very fascinating. So we have a couple of comments coming in. I'm going to go ahead and read those. Okay, and then we'll go on to some stories and more. Okay, let's see what we have here. And by the way, just a little message of love for all those on the YouTube channel. I love YouTube. I really love that platform. It's just a great, really great platform. I will say, a lot of people on YouTube are used to seeing videos that are very polished and edited. And I want to just clearly explain that we have this really relaxed forum where we meet together and we have this discussion on Zoom for my Facebook group members. And then as a courtesy, I take that and I upload it to YouTube so that you can see it too. So that means there'll be periods where we're chit-chatting, reading comments, and so on. But I assure you, there's a lot of information here, and I literally almost always have at least 2 pages of notes. And so this is not just, chit chat. Okay. I mentioned that because we've had people, people are just used to certain things a certain way on YouTube. And I love YouTube, but you guys, no trolls, please. No trolls. Catherine, wait a minute. Let me go back a little bit more. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. I didn't read all of your comments. We do have a question that is off topic, so I'm going to skip that one. It's on the topic that we talked about last month. And we're going to focus on fairies and elementals. So that's funny. You know what? I am seeing, oh, that's funny. That's so funny. Zoom is showing me the chat from last time, and it's never done that before. Very interesting. I guess they changed their settings because I was like, what are they talking about? This is off topic. That was from last time. So now we go into today's chat. Stephanie M is saying hi from Arizona. Hi, Stephanie. Rose is joining us from San Antonio. Wonderful to see you, Rose. And Catherine says hi from California, eating Captain Crunch with organic soy milk. That brings back memories from childhood. Yeah, Captain Crunch. Haven't had that in decades. I have the memory of the taste, though, and the crunch. Stephanie M., I don't know regarding elementals, but I do know there are spirit masters or experts on nature / natural disasters who assist with them, with these things, and us in affecting them. Yes. Yeah. Indeed, there are various levels of nature spirits, which is a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to discuss today. But you're right, there are spiritual beings. I think that's what you're talking about. Spiritual beings that actually work with natural disasters. There are spiritual beings that are a part of entire mountain ranges. When you say spiritual masters or experts on nature, I'm wondering if you're talking about spiritual teachers. But anyway, it's an interesting comment. Catherine says, I don't think I've had encounters with elementals. Ooh, well, after listening to today's class and developing some discernment, maybe you will, if you wish. You can welcome it in. Stephanie says, many Aboriginal traditions believe all of nature is imbued with spirit. Yes. And that idea that all of nature is imbued with spirit is also called animism. And so if someone has that belief that all of nature is imbued with spirit, that person is called an animist. And I would be described as an animist because that's what I believe, that all of nature is has consciousness, and it is all imbued with spirit. So animism. So if you ever see the word animism or animist, that's what that means. Little vocabulary. Stephanie says, I don't know anything about fairies. Catherine, I like your videos as they are. Thank you. You know, here's the thing about showing up online. Some people will like what you do. Some people will hate it. And if you try to, like, you just can't please everyone. So it's all fine, whatever. Oh, Stephanie says, no, I mean in spirit. Okay. And there are aliens with different spirit energies. Some can call on them to affect and help nature. Indeed. Yeah, we could go down a whole rabbit hole with that one, but I'm going to go on. But thank you for bringing that up. All right, so I'm going to take a break from the comments, but I'll come back to them. Thank you for such a great conversation to kick us off. So let me get a drink, because I know historically I end up clearing my throat a lot as we go on because I get scratchy from all the talking. So pardon me while I slurp. Okay. Getting back to the teaching notes, today's class is not an in-depth study of different types of elementals. Today's class is a discussion and a sharing of stories and an evaluation of, are fairies and elementals safe? Okay. The focus is on safety. Are they safe? This is also not an in-depth study of the folklore of different elementals. There are certain regions of the world, like Ireland, that have very rich folklore about the fae, about fairies and other elementals. And so if you're interested in the topic, that would be fun to do some research on. I feel like folklore is not necessarily truth. It might not be the truth at all, but there might be some threads of truth in it. So it is interesting to include it in one's research. So for me, in all of my psychic protection and spiritual work, and including this topic, I tend to be more forensic. So as opposed to studying all the folklore, I tend to be more forensic. And by forensic, I mean I am going to study my personal observations. When it comes to different kinds of entities, for example, I'm going to notice my own encounters with them and encounters that I've had with certain entities while working with clients. And I will focus on, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? Is it safe? How to clear it? What works? What doesn't work? And so right in there, almost like scientifically, but also with intuition, with observation skills, right? So that tends to be my approach. So this is not based on anyone else's work or anything like that. All right. So as we go, if you can think of any stories, if any stories pop into your mind that you haven't already shared, then go ahead and share now. So I have a few stories to share with you. And then we're going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts on whether they're evil or not. And then I'm going to give you 4 really simple but helpful tips for having a good relationship with them. Just reading a random comment there. Okay, first story. Now, I don't know. Some of these stories might sound really far out there, but welcome to my world. I mean, I've had all sorts of experiences, especially paranormal stuff really ramped up when I was a teenager. Had some experiences when I was a younger kid, and then really ramped up when I was a teenager into adulthood. And so weird stuff is my normal. Okay, so if this sounds super weird, but it might, because you guys are you know, those of you who are involved in this channel, you already know. You've probably had plenty of weird things. So I'll start off with the first weird story that happened in my 20s. So in my 20s, think, what was it? How old was I? Like mid to late 20s. Okay. I was having some very significant health issues and I was really struggling with it. And at that point, I don't recall ever having had um, a fairy experience, although there might be something that I'm forgetting that I will later remember. But right now, I think that before this point, I had not had any experiences with fairies, except that I I had a nice feeling about them. Like that's all. I wasn't afraid of them. I had a positive opinion of them. That was it. So I'm in my mid to late 20s, and I had developed a chronic health issue, and I was laying in bed, and it was still light outside. So there was light in the room. It was not pitch dark. And I was on my back, and I had my eyes open. And I remember thinking, what are those over there? Are those flies? I thought there were flies in my room. I saw these dark shadow things that were the size of a fly. Each one of them was the size of a fly, and it was like a shadow, like it wasn't like a well-formed image. It just looked like a shadow, the size of a fly, and there were many of them, and they were down towards my feet, and they were coming up my body. Now, it wasn't like a swarm that was like scary or anything like that. But there were several of them, like maybe 50 of them. And as they got closer, I looked, and that's when I saw, oh my gosh, these are fairies. Because I saw each one had a body, and the wings were moving incredibly fast, like blur. The wings were moving like blurry speed. Okay. At this point, they didn't say anything to me. All I saw was that they each were at different places around my body, and it appeared that they were working diligently, I think working diligently on my energy field. At that point, I had had some formal education in energy healing, and so I was aware of, you know, the auric field and your energy and all of that. And I was like, I think they're doing some healing work on me, but I'm not quite sure. And then after a while, maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes, they dissipated and they left. And I was like, huh, I'm pretty sure I saw what I think I saw, but I can never prove it. So then about a week later, I was getting a massage because I have a spinal issue. And I remember I was alone in the room. So it was either before or after the massage. I saw a shadow out of the corner of my eye, and I immediately recognized it as one of those fairies that I had seen. And it flew right up to my ear. And I kid you not, I heard this voice that was like a really sped up voice, you know, like um, when I was little, we could play a record on the wrong speed and make the voices sound really, really fast, like Munchkin voices, right? Well, the voice was female. I knew that. And it was really fast. So I couldn't tell what she said, but I knew that she said something. And then she left the area. Um, Later, I think I was talking to somebody about this, And they said, well, fairies exist in like time works differently for them. And so it's not so how does I have to think about this. So time is faster or slower? Time is faster. I don't know. My brain can't get this. But because they're at a different time speed, then that's why her voice sounded really fast. Anyway, um, so fast forward, um, my whole adult life, I was always very kind to nature. So I always really cared about the plants and the animals, and I didn't destroy things. And so it doesn't surprise me that in my 40s, when I moved to a place that was out in nature, I started having a ton of elemental experiences. And they were different than what I would have expected. I actually saw gnomes and um, my adult, since I had that experience when I was in my 20s, I did pretty much believe that fairies existed, but all the other stuff that's in fairy tale books, I didn't necessarily believe that those things existed, right? But again, I tend to be pretty forensic. So if I have had a personal experience or personal experiences, I'm going to consider that these beings might exist. But I'm also an open-minded skeptic. So part of me is going to say, okay, this is what I think that I saw. This is how I interpret it. Does that mean that's actually what it was? No, it could be any number of things. Anyway, when I was in my 40s, I moved out to this nature location and I started to have these encounters with gnomes. And the first encounter was I was again on my bed laying down on my back, and I was not sleeping. It was still dusk. And so the room was light, and it was um the weather was gentle, so I had the windows open. And so the like the screen, what so there was an open window and a screen, right, to keep the bugs out. And so I don't know why, but I was talking out loud. I was talking out loud because again, I was having a health struggle. And I was saying, I'm having this health struggle and I'm frustrated about it. And this and this and this is going on. And this is how I'm feeling. And I don't know exactly who I was talking to. Maybe divine or my guides or just, I don't know. Have you ever done that before where you're just like, it's not that you're talking to yourself. It's like whoever's listening who can help me, you know. And so I'm talking out loud, and then all of a sudden I see this gnome jump up. It didn't scare me, but it was very unexpected. It jumped up. Um, it was outside on the other side of the outside side of the screen. And it jumped up and it was just like standing there on the windowsill. And this sounds so crazy, but okay, again, I'm an open-minded skeptic. So the open-minded skeptic part of me is like, oh, maybe I just wanted to see a gnome or I was having some mental episode or something. But here's which I don't have any diagnosis like that, by the way. But here's the thing. Um, this gnome, it didn't say very much. It just said, he said that I should take bladderwrack. And I was like, I didn't even know what that was, okay, at the time. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what that is. And then he jumped down and I had other encounters with him later, but so then I went to sleep. I've had so many spiritual encounters that did not keep me awake. I went to sleep. I went to sleep right after that. And the next morning, first thing I did was I looked up bladderwrack. because I was like, is that for your bladder? I didn't know what it was for. Bladderwrack is a seaweed that is used as a medicinal for thyroid issues, which is what I had been talking about out loud, about the health issues, that my thyroid was low, that I had body pain, that I had fatigue, that I had weight gain, that blah, blah, blah. And this gnome recommended a medicinal that is used exactly for that. So so my open-minded skeptic brain was like, that's really interesting that I was given the medicinal that would actually help me. And you know what? That happened approximately 10 years ago-ish. And I still take Bladderwrack. And in fact, that medicinal took my blood work from low thyroid. I won't get into all the specifics, okay, but it took me from low thyroid to normal range. And then there was one point where I stopped taking it just as a I thought, oh, I don't need it. I don't really need that. Open-minded skeptic. I didn't really need that. I don't know why I was. And then my thyroid dropped down again. Started taking it again, went back into normal range. So yeah, so this gnome told me what medicinal I should take to help, and it did help. And that house where I was living in nature, it was this incredible magical land. I I have such fond memories of it. I'm probably going to cry right now. The only reason why I moved away from there was because I needed a fresh start in Arizona. This place was in Kansas City, outside of a farm. I needed a fresh start, and I hate cold weather. I just had to get somewhere warm. But aside from that, I mean, this place, in the spring, the entire yard would fill with so many fireflies, with so many lightning bugs, that it looked like Christmas. The whole yard would light up. And a client of mine, who lived like 15 minutes away, also out in the country, she said that as she drove, she saw a few fireflies in the other yards, but mine was lit up. And then also, there was just a whole, just tons of different elementals. There were fairies and there were trolls. I didn't believe in trolls before. Go figure. I don't even really know anything about them. But again, personal experience. This is what I was seeing. And I think, here's my thought. I think that they, meaning elementals, they know when someone has the psychic abilities and when someone is a true lover of nature. And they will sometimes, not always, but they will sometimes choose to appear to those types of people. It's not always the case, but I think that's why I was having so many experiences there, that the feeling that I got from them as a collective, all the different kinds of elementals that I was seeing, was that it was like, oh, here's this lady who knows about us. Like they were excited. So it was just this beautiful, magical time. And yeah, I think people who've never had any paranormal experience, and people who've never had any type of experience with earth-based spirits, will think this is completely delusional. Right? I think it's delusional. And that's okay. Like those of us who have had the weird spiritual experiences, we don't need everyone to know that it's true. But I'm just acknowledging, yeah, a lot of people believe in angels. A lot of people believe in things that are directly connected with their religion. but they don't necessarily believe in things outside of that. Like maybe they believe in, you know, the direct aspects of their religion. Let's say if they're Christian, they believe in Jesus, they believe in maybe in angels, but anything about ghosts or fairies, it's like, no, we don't believe that. Or if it is there, it must be demonic or it's not real, right? And the rest of us, we've had these experiences, and we know we know in our inner knowing that it was real and it's not a trick. Now, I am going to talk about some trickster stuff in just a little bit. So let's take a break for a second, read a comment. Okay. Just going to relax for a second. My next story is going to be about an angry elemental, and it's a short story. And then we'll get into some information. Stephanie M says, I was once told psychically to eat strawberries for subclinical low thyroid. Yeah, I don't know. I've had different experiences where I've gotten psychic information that I was supposed to, for example, take an herb for something that nowhere online said that it was for what my intuition was saying I should take it for. Like online, it was all about taking it for some other issue, but my intuition was telling me you should take this for XYZ issue. So I think our intuition, our inner knowing, and our body's wisdom, I think it's all very wise. So if you received psychic information from yourself or from someone else about something, then I think there's something to it. Catherine is asking, are spiders an elemental? Spiders are an actual animal. So we're not talking about, so as we're talking about elementals, this is a good, sorry, I was trying to think of the right word. This is a good description that we're getting into that we want to, I want to explain that here we're talking about spiritual beings, beings that are spiritual and not physical. So there are physical beings also that are also important beings, like spiders, insects, the deer that come into my yard, the rabbits, the birds, all of them are sacred creatures, but they're physical beings. And they also have a consciousness. But right now we're talking about spiritual beings. Yeah. Now, let me see here. Catherine is saying, no, I saw them after going out. I was sick in the morning. She's talking about how she did see some spiders crawling up the wall. Now, there is something that we call astral spiders and astral insects, and there can be spiritual, so astral, non-physical spiders that people can see. Those are not necessarily a good thing. Usually they're an indication that there's some weird energy going on, and they are not actually elementals. So it's really good that we broached that, because we want to make sure we are defining things. So thank you for that question. Okay. Story about the angry elemental. Excuse me, let me get another drink. Okay. Years ago, I went on a camping trip to a lake, and I don't know, maybe it was like 6 years ago, something like that. So my psychic abilities were well developed by that point. And So I was there with a couple of other spiritual seekers, and I was sleeping in my own area. And that night I had a dream, and it was one of those dreams, when you have a dream, when you know it's not a dream, it's a vision, it's spiritual information. And I knew it for a fact when I woke up. So I had a dream or a visitation or a spiritual connection where I was aware that there was a fairy, a male fairy, that was in the bush, in the shrubs, bushes by the river, by the water. And he was pissed. He wasn't evil. He was just very cranky and very annoyed that all these people kept coming and messing with his area. And he didn't like it at all. Now, the dream, I think it wasn't a warning. There wasn't any potential attack or anything like that. I think I was just gaining a view of this being that was in the area. I don't think he was trying to communicate with me, get these people to stop doing this. I think I was just, I just happened to become aware of him. And like, oh, this poor guy, he's so annoyed. Like all these people, like it wasn't one of those nature areas where everybody is destroying it. People were fairly gentle and it wasn't overcrowded or anything like that. But there were definitely people going in and out and traipsing through and people talking. And it definitely was not what that fairy wanted. And he was very annoyed. But he did not feel evil and he wasn't doing anything evil. He was just, he didn't like that his territory was being encroached upon. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, about how elementals might have certain territory that they don't want their area to be messed with. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So in my current home, we do have fairies and elves. Those are, and a few gnomes that I've seen in the area. But the thing is that they don't come into the neighborhood. So where I live is in an oval shaped subdivision. And that's it. There's just this oval of older houses and trailers. And then there's miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of undeveloped land and mountains. And so my backyard faces out towards undeveloped area. The neighborhood itself is definitely not filled with people who care about nature. I should just put it that way to be kind. We've got people playing, just people who are not taking care with nature and whose lifestyle practices are a bit rough around the edges. And so when I moved in, the first 6 months that I moved in, I was doing a lot of blessing and clearing of the land because there was a lot of dark energy. I was seeing dark shadows walking along the land, and I had to work really hard to, to get the boundaries established around the property that I'm renting, so that these dark shadows wouldn't walk across my yard, because that's not what I want. So it took about 6 months of steady work to bless and bless and bless the land and cleanse that area. And as I did that, then the elementals did allow me to see them, and they don't come anywhere near the neighborhood. They don't like the energy in the neighborhood, but they actually stay a few miles out in the undeveloped area, in the undeveloped land. And they feel safe out there. It doesn't feel safe for them in the neighborhood. The human energy is very harsh there. I have had a little bit of communication with some of the elementals kind of long distance, right? Like from miles away. Whereas the place that I was living in Kansas, they were right there in the yard with me. It was pretty cool. There's actually somewhere on my channel on YouTube, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, there's a video that's I think it's called Gnomes on My Property or something like that. And so I go more deeply into the story of the property in Kansas. Okay, so let's just mention here again that in Irish folklore, that in Irish culture, there's a ton of folklore about fairies and elementals. And a lot of the folklore is about the fairies being evil, or at least tricksters at the very least, and that the fairies steal babies and trick adults to go into the fairy realm where they get lost forever. There's so many stories about that. And who knows, maybe if I had been living in Ireland for many years, maybe my experiences would be different than what the experiences that I did have living where I've lived. Maybe the experiences are different in different parts of the world, who knows? But I have not had any experiences where I felt like I was being tricked or there was any danger that I was going to step into, be lost into the elemental realm or anything like that. So our big question, are there evil elementals? And remember, elementals would be like fairies, gnomes, elves, fill in the blank, all the different kinds of fairies, all the different kinds of, all of them. Are there evil elementals? So my psychic read on this is that yes, there are some evil elementals, but it is not common. So this is my psychic read on this. Yes, there are some evil elementals, but it is not common. There are way more evil humans, percentage-wise, than evil elementals. That's my psychic read. What I'm getting is that the elementals are naturally good. Most of them are naturally good. Some of them are playful, and some of them can even be playful to the point of mischievous, where they like to play tricks, not evil tricks, but like hiding. There are stories of people who have had their items hidden. My feeling is that that now I'm not assuming this is always the case, but my feeling is that the people who've had the real mischievous troublemaker types of elementals, there could be something at play where the person has encroached on the elementals' land, or they've somehow offended the elementals, or that person is disrespectful to nature in general. Maybe cuts down a bunch of trees and doesn't even think twice about it. So, there could be someone who really loves nature, but is unaware that they are going hiking all the time, walking straight through an area that maybe is sacred to certain groups of elementals, and they don't want people traipsing through, for example, right? So we want to be careful about and respectful about encroaching in their territories. And I'll talk about that when I get into our 4 tips. One of my colleagues years ago, decades ago, warned me and said, you need to be careful. You're talking about fairies. Fairies are evil and dark, and they can hurt you. And I was like, okay, I hear what you're saying. And I've literally never had an experience like that ever. But those of you who are watching live and replay, please do share your stories. Share your stories. If you've had something negative that's happened, share your story. And if you have any insight as to maybe why that was happening, was your backyard in their area? You were like out mowing the yard, and that was maybe their area where they lived, or is there something else that you suspect was causing the issue? Okay. So before we get into this trickster idea, I'm going to read another comment here. Stephanie says, can you feel sacred spaces? How would they be perceived differently if you should especially go to these or should not go to them? I've long been attracted to Sedona vortexes. Yeah, I'm able to sense when there's something different about a space. We're all different, and I'll say that I personally don't like the Sedona vortexes, and this is not anything against Sedona, but vortexes can be very dysregulating and discombobulating, like because they it's literally a tornado of energy. It's not grounding and calming, and it definitely can stir things up. It can throw people off kilter. It can actually cause chaos in a person's life. Not always for the best, but sometimes it can take them to a better place in their life, but in a very harsh way where anything that doesn't serve them is just like thrown out the window. Um, Catherine is asking, is a vortex a portal? Um, Kind of yes and no. A portal, imagine it as an open doorway where energies and entities can pass through either way. A vortex is more of like a tornado of energy. There can sometimes be entities that come through, but that's not its main, um, that's not the main thing that it does. It's mainly just spinning energy. It's like a tornado. Okay. So they're a little bit different. Stephanie M says, I had a very strong energy healing experience on a ley line known to be spiritual. Yeah. And ley lines can be very spiritual, and they can also be areas where the veil is thin, where you can perceive other dimensions. And let's speaking of dimensions, let's talk about the fact that fairies and elementals are said to exist in a dimension very close to ours, but not our exact dimension. So those who are clairvoyant or have some sort of psychic abilities can see beyond our current dimension and can sometimes see elementals, fairies that are actually existing in this very nearby dimension. Catherine is asking, what is the purpose of a vortex? I'll answer that quickly, but we're getting a little bit off topic. It's not really a purpose, but a cause. The cause of a vortex is it's caused by energetic disruption. It can be caused by energetic disruption caused by humans, but more frequently, it's caused by Earth. It's caused by different energies within the structure of the earth. So we have different ley lines, we have different energies within the earth, and sometimes there are certain parts of the planet where there are energies that are unstable or spinning or doing other sorts of things. And it is something that's happening naturally with the earth. Okay. And the same thing with portals. There are some portals that are naturally occurring in and around the earth. And there are some portals that are caused by negative spiritual activity, and some portals that are caused by human spiritual activity. Okay, so we're getting way off topic. We're getting into dimensions and fractal dimensions. Let's stay on topic, you guys. Great ideas. I'm glad you're asking questions. Okay, so I had so back to elementals. I had a colleague who diagnosed her client as having an issue with an evil elemental. And the colleague said that a lot of people don't know about these evil elementals, and she's trying to help spread information about this. And I totally respect that. However, we shared this client in common for a while. And my view, when I looked psychically at the client, what I saw was that it was not an evil elemental. It was a jinn. A jinn is a shapeshifter entity. And jinn love to shapeshift into all sorts of things, including elementals. And I have had, and anyway, before I jump into the next part of the story, I truly believed and still believe that this colleague was unfortunately very wrong, that because she didn't know, she hadn't had direct experiences with jinn, and she did not know how to identify them. She was tricked by this jinn. She thought that what she was dealing with was an evil elemental, because that's what she knew. In her career, she worked with elemental energy. So she assumed that what she was seeing was actually an evil elemental. And meanwhile, the client continued, because I was no longer working with the client and she was. Meanwhile, the client still had a jinn issue, but the jinn just did a better job of hiding. So it was really unfortunate. And so what I was going to say earlier is that I've actually had several times where I've had encounters with jinn, these shapeshifter entities, where they have shapeshifted into one or even a room full of elementals. And I talk about one of these stories in my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light. There was one jinn that posed as an entire room of different elementals. These elementals like filled my room, and it was one jinn. And that one jinn then shifted and later posed as demons, Satan, and all sorts of other entities. So it's important to understand that sometimes there are situations where a person thinks that they're having an experience with an evil entity when it is actually another type of entity pretending to be an elemental. So there are times when people think that they're having an experience with an evil elemental when it is actually a jinn or some other shapeshifter pretending to be an elemental. So it's kind of mind-bending. This is a kind of a blessing and a curse, but I wouldn't want to be without this ability. I have been blessed with the ability to discern the trickster entities. I've had, well, that was awakened in 2016 when I had a firsthand brutal encounter with a jinn, and that was shape-shifting into all sorts of things. And it was very confusing, but after that, I had the ability to discern them. And as someone who has this discernment, I can tell you for a fact that they do love to pretend to be elementals. So that to say, if you ever have an experience that is very scary or evil with an elemental, it's possible it could actually be an evil elemental, but consider that it could be a jinn or some other dark shapeshifter pretending to be an elemental, because they are masters of trickery. They want to just create confusion. So what do you think? Do you think it's kind of, as far as elementals go, as far as safety, do you think that the fairies are all good and all lovely? Are they negative? Do we need to be cautious, or is it somewhere in between? What do you think, and what are your stories? And ultimately, the answer is use your discernment in all spiritual matters, because anything is possible. Always use your discernment. You're going to find, if you've watched hours and hours of my videos, you're going to find that rarely do I say that something is all this or all this. Oftentimes the answer is somewhere in the middle. And in fact, when there are spiritual teachers or spiritual thought leaders who are who are insisting, it's all this, whatever, fill in the blank, it's all this over here, it's all this. I'm like, yeah, but is it? Because when we really use our analytical mind and our open-minded skepticism, we see that often the truth is somewhere in the middle. And so on a case-by-case basis, we always have to use discernment. And we don't ever, no matter, even if it's a beautiful, lovely looking fairy, we don't ever want to give our power away to any being. You always have to use your discernment at all times and stay in your own authority. So I'm going to give you 4 tips in just a moment, but do you have any questions? And let's read some comments here. Okay, so let me get a drink. So, whoops. Or maybe I'll just pour it on myself. Great question. Where was it? Catherine asks, is shapeshifting the same as just projecting, or both, and also affect us but be invisible? They are 2 totally different things. So imagine that there is an entity. So we're just imagining, it's not real. Imagine that there's an entity that, let's say it's a dark being, and it is able to shapeshift. So it's in a room, or let's just say it's in a room somewhere, some random room, not in your house, somewhere else. It's in a room, and let's imagine that it's standing there and it shapeshifts into something else. And then it shapeshifts into something else. It's able to shift form wherever it happens to be. Wherever, so it goes into another room and it shifts and it shifts. It goes outside, it shifts. Astral projection is when a living person projects their astral body to another place on the planet. That's astral projection, which was last month's topic. So if you're watching this and you didn't see last month's topic, go to the YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and it is our most recent class from last month. She asks, and also, can it affect us but be invisible? Any spiritual being can affect you even if you can't see it. So sometimes people will feel or sense an entity or be negatively impacted by it, but they won't see it because maybe they're not clairvoyant, or for whatever other reason, they're just not seeing it. Okay. Or maybe that entity does a good job of staying invisible. So it can definitely affect you, whether you can see it or not. And the same is true with positive spiritual beings. they can still be present even if you can't see them. Let's say like your guardian angels or the elementals in your yard, they're there even if you can't actually see them. Okay. Stephanie says, would elementals appear dark or negative, not by their type, but because we are violating or doing something wrong to that element in that area? Yes. So, just like people, just like a person, maybe there's so let's compare this to a person. Let's say there's a person who's generally a good person, but somebody keeps coming into their yard, like somebody keeps bringing their 3 dogs on leashes into that person's yard and lets the dogs poop all over the yard, let's say, or the kids come into the yard and tear up the bushes or whatever. There's just like disrespect, right? And so that person who's normally a nice person is going to come out in their bathrobe early in the morning and shake their finger and go, what are you doing? And they're going to be like mad and maybe throw their newspaper at the person or whatever. Right. And so people are going to go, oh, that person is grouchy. Maybe they're a bad person or they're mean or whatever, but they're actually a nice person. They're generally a nice person, but their area is being encroached upon. And I think the same thing is true with elementals, that if we're going and trashing their area, and trashing their area could be like going and sitting out in nature and blasting your music. So it doesn't have to be throwing trash. It can be trashing, like just disrespecting their area in any sort of way, cutting down the trees. And by the way, sometimes we do have to cut trees down or cut back bushes. And if there are ways to approach it respectfully, and you can even speak out loud to the elementals and say, I'm sorry that I have to cut down this tree, and thank you for cohabitating peacefully here with us. And this tree is dying, and we need to remove it. We send blessings to it, or whatever that you want to say, right? So sometimes you do have to do things to the land that they might not love, but you can approach it in a way that's respectful. So a person like you, Stephanie, who's sensitive, you might perceive an elemental to look or feel dark if it's kind of pissed off that people have been disrespecting its area. Catherine says, where'd it go? Catherine says, I think the elementals would be like humans, bad, good, and in between. Yeah. And the ones that are good can get cranky too. If people are being jerks, then the good ones can be cranky. Stephanie M says, I have not experienced fairies, but I feel only that they are good, happy, and light. Yep. Stephanie says, I respect the tremendous power of nature, so I could see elementals going either way. Yeah, just like nature, Mother Nature, there's there's sunshine and beautiful blue skies, and then there's tornadoes that are terribly destructive, or earthquakes, tsunamis. But one thing to remember about all of those is that, we can think of those things as evil, but really they're just part of nature. They're just part of the ebb and flow of nature. Yeah. Rose says, I was going to say, trust your gut. Yes, as always. Stephanie says, my personal experience working with strong nature energy has always been positive or neutral. Excuse me. Water. Stephanie says, I feel like increasing natural disasters are Earth's way of showing us there are costs to not living in balance with Earth, including atmosphere interactions with, with the sun, a sign to change, feather than sledgehammer if we don't heed the message. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's get into a couple of tips. 4 tips. Get your pen and paper ready. Now, I do want to announce really quick here that in my paid academy, Spiritual Empowerment Academy, we are starting a brand new topic series where we will be covering nature and earth-based practices for psychic protection. And we're starting that next week. However, you can join anytime. So if you're watching this replay some other time in the future, whenever you do apply and join, then you would have access to any of the past classes. So I'm very excited about this new topic that we're going to be diving into. And we're going to be diving into so many things, but just a little sliver of it is working with elementals, which we're talking about today, even working with plants, guardians of the land, ancestors of the land, the different elements, earth, air, fire, and water for psychic protection, even teaching you how to shape shift your energy for protection and how to effectively cloak your energy for protection. And that's just a tiny sliver of all the scope of things that we're going to be doing. Okay, we're going to close out by giving 4 tips for having benevolent, friendly experiences with elementals. So if you accidentally end up having some negative experiences, these tips might help you. And if you are not having negative experiences, these will hopefully help to keep your experiences positive. Tip number 1 is to build a relationship with nature. So even if you just have the tiniest yard, you just have a little square of grass and a bush, you still develop a relationship with the nature around wherever you're living. Go and sit out there. Go and sit outside. So definitely develop a connection with nature near your home. If you live in an apartment high-rise, go outside of the high-rise. If there's a little area somewhere around there where you can just sit, hang out, pretend like you're reading a magazine or you're reading your phone or whatever, and make a connection with nature. If you have more privacy, you have a yard, like a regular yard, go out into your yard and just spend time out there and just notice the animals, notice how the energy feels. That is the simple way of how to build a relationship with nature. Just your presence and noticing. And that leads us to step number 2, which is to be mindful and aware. So here's an example of being mindful versus not being mindful. Let's say you're going walking in a nature area and you're not paying attention, you're talking on the phone, blah, 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 or you're listening to music and you're just walking through and you don't notice that you've walked through an area that maybe is a sacred area. Maybe it's sacred to the elementals or for some other reason. But if you're more mindful and aware, and you're not distracted, you walk through and you maybe even stop and you say, oh, this area looks different. Maybe there's even sometimes you'll see an area where there are branches of trees that create a circle. And that's often a fairy portal where elementals can pass through. Don't worry, you can walk through it. You're not going to get lost in the fairy realm. I've tried it and I didn't get lost, but it's up to your own discernment there. But anyway, you just want to be mindful and aware when you're doing your lawn care, like if you're caring for your yard, don't just chop things down, but take a moment to acknowledge the plant that you're trimming and things like that. So being mindful and aware. And that leads us to number 3, which is showing respect and asking permission. So let's say you're trimming a bush, you're going to show respect and just have thoughts of gratitude to the bush or the tree or the whatever that you're trimming. And asking permission is like you're saying it. Let's say you're digging up something from the earth. You say, is it all right if I dig this up? Maybe you've got a whole bed of herbs and you want to tune in and say which part wants to be harvested and which part doesn't want to be harvested. And you use your inner guidance, your inner wisdom to tune into that. And step number 4, or tip number 4, is to give gifts or offerings for the elementals. This can be giving crystals to the land, putting fresh or dried herbs out on the land. Some people even leave food out for the fairies with the belief that in some way they are able to ingest it, even though visibly we don't see them ingesting it. My favorite way of giving gifts to the elementals and also to all of the spirits of the land is by sharing Reiki or blessings or prayers. So that's my favorite way. And that's how I've developed great relationships with the elementals, where they trust me, so they're willing to come closer. But I also will randomly give crystals to different trees in my yard. I'll be like, here's a crystal for you, and I'll just put it right like at the base of the tree. So whatever is your style, you can give gifts, and it's just a really nice way of being a good neighbor. So think of it as being a good neighbor or a good visitor if you're visiting an area or if that's where you live. So that's how you can establish and maintain good relationships with the elementals, whether you have any contact with them or not. It's just a good idea and it's respectful. So do we have any last minute questions before we close out? Let me know. See, we have a couple comments, I think. Okay, Stephanie is asking, is this Spiritual Empowerment Academy Earth Nature series for a year or just this month? It's actually for the next 12 months. We're going to cover a scope of amazing topics, and it's all earth-based and nature-based topics that relate directly to how to apply that to psychic protection. I think in one of my videos, I might have said that we are covering shamanic practices, and we actually are, but I've been lately saying nature and earth-based practices because I want to be careful to not be engaging in any cultural appropriation, because I myself am not Indigenous, but we all, and I myself included, we all are part of nature. We are all existing as members of the Earth's ecosystem. We're not separate from it. And so we all have our experiences with nature, with the earth. And I've been doing a lot of work with this over the years. And I did study with a shaman for a couple of years. So I'm really excited to share this with all of you. Stephanie says, I need to learn to cloak or dial down solar storm energy. Yep. Stephanie says, what about plants to help as an offering, like flowers for butterflies? Yes. Yeah, you can actually, on purpose, plan your gardening, put certain plants into the ground that are going to bring butterflies or birds or bees. And those particular plants are also going to be attractive for fairies. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let me get a drink. You're welcome, Rose. Stephanie says, I was psychically told I should learn more about fairies. I've been avoidant of Ireland for no rational reason. Later, I found out I had a past life as a witch, probably from her healing in Ireland, and I was hung. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Catherine says, in regard to developing a good relationship with the elementals, how about How about sweet talking out loud or telepathically? Absolutely. You can talk to them. You can walk outside, walk through your garden and say, hello, flowers. Hello. If there's any fairies here, I wish you a good morning, or whatever you want to say to them. I speak out loud and send positive intentions and good wishes to all the nature spirits, and I find it to be very helpful. So yes, you don't have to do a prayer per se, but you can speak to them directly. And there are people that I know who have so many fairies around them, and they actually talk to the fairies. They might not see them, but they talk to them. And I think the fairies like that. And so that's why those people have a lot of elementals around them. Stephanie says, I talk to plants and animals, sometimes rocks. Yeah, and that's because those of us who are animists, who believe that there is consciousness in everything, it makes sense that we would talk to the plants, talk to the animals, talk to the rocks. I talk to the mountains. We have mountains right outside my window. You know, whatever resonates with your belief system, go for it. Catherine says, I'm a communicator and I talk to all the nature and animals, trees, etc. I get so sad when the weather is bad for the trees and for life. Thank you all so much for such a great conversation. We had a lot of good questions and interactions today. So thank you so much for being here. Oh, good. Now I can see your face. I had the comments up for quite a while. I couldn't see you. Good to see your smiling faces. It's wonderful to see you. Let me tell you what next month's topic is going to be. I just got a little download about it earlier today. Earlier today, I was like, I don't know what we're going to do next time. Usually I know. And then I got the download, and this is what's coming for next month's free class. What it means to be a spiritually targeted individual. What does it mean to be spiritually targeted? So that's going to be a really interesting one. And it's good to learn more about it so you know what's what, you know, so you know what to avoid. Yeah, some people are pointing at themselves going, it could be me, it could be you. Yeah, so can look forward to that next month, of course. Wonderful to see your smiling faces. Thank you all so much for being here live. I love sharing these free classes. I do plan to keep doing one free class per month until I don't want to anymore, but I don't see that happening. I'm going to keep doing it as long as I'm called to. So also sending lots of love out there to everybody watching the replay, and definitely leave comments. Just a little shout out to YouTube and the other places online. When you subscribe and when you like and comment, it helps so much. Because, for example, on YouTube, there's this thing called shadow banning. Shadow banning is when people's certain content is just pushed down and kind of hidden. And if you notice from my channel, it's really shadow banned. There's like, it should have a lot of views, and it's not about popularity. It's about, because who cares about being popular? I don't care about that, but it's about getting this information out there. So let's help counteract that shadow banning by doing this little thing, which is to leave a comment, leave a like, put a like on any of the videos on the YouTube channel. And that just helps tell the algorithm to be nice, to play nice, and to show the video to other people. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you. Oh, and Catherine says, I'm OCD about clicking the thumbs up. I really appreciate that. That's so great. Thank you for doing that. So I will see you all in the Facebook group, and I will see you all in next month's free class. As always, I'm sending you lots of love. Until next time.